About 3 years ago, I decided as an automotive seller, a lot of pressure low cost.
All right.
Oh, there he is.
I want to get started with this. It's a new model that I'd like to present, and it's about the importance of finding your sweet spot in your career. And a couple people, Brad and I have been talking, a few other people, think that really it's not just about your career, but it's about finding your sweet spot in your life. And I've asked people, or invited people to bring their significant other if they're in a relationship, because my view has always been you have to look at it from a family perspective, that people just can't go off and do their own thing anymore because we're in a changing society, a gender changing society, and also an economic changing society where you have to think about yourself as a family as an economic unit. And almost like every family is in business for itself. I've heard it said every individual is in business for themselves, but I think now it's more every family is in business for themselves, because we don't have long-standing careers. I think some of the longest people standing are the ones that have their own businesses. Dave Ross mentioned 25 years. There's another company yesterday that's been in business for 30 years. But those of you that are in the corporate world, it's not so secure. We moved around, and there's a lot of people here that, as couples, have made a change. I mean, you guys are a prime example of going into business with Ann. Other people like the Josephs have made the move together from Grand Rapids. And I think increasingly we're seeing that you have to think about the economic model of a family. Does the family have enough revenue, first of all, together? Does the family have a support where both people are able to do relatively what they want to be doing? Sometimes I say both people. Sometimes it's even more because you have kids living at home. It's parents. It's a unit in a lot of ways. Another thing is, are people using their talents? And so a lot of times I think if one person is unhappy in their job, everybody's unhappy. It's misery. So I'm a big advocate of planning together. Roger, what do you move this? Oh, okay. Planning together, and Pat and I, my wife, we're on our 43rd year at this point. You probably say, "God, you must have got married at about 3, right?" Actually, you would have thought that with her more than me, but the idea is we sat down and actually did a visioning experience ourselves. We started to think, well, how far out do we want to think about how we want our lives to be? And we're 60 or so, and like we thought, well, we really can't go out much farther than 3 years. We thought, well, that's not what we advise people. In fact, things are changing so rapidly. She's got an aging mother, 90th birthday next week. We don't know where our kids are going to be in the future. We have, financially, we're not sure if Pat does traveling to Africa. I go to Africa. We want to do lots of things. So it was really very useful to spend a morning kind of thinking about what do we want to do in terms of economics, what do we want to do in terms of our own life together, our couple lives, what are the recreational things, how do we support health, how do we support and interact with our family. So it's really kind of an interesting thing, and I want to write a book around this topic of finding a sweet spot, and the idea would be not only an individual sweet spot, but a family-based sweet spot. Retirement, Ellen's another example. If I may use you for an example, both you and your husband are moving on the fourth quarter of careers. So what do you do plan together, and your daughter's in Africa. You know? So how do you plan all these kind of contingencies? And one person just can't go off and do it independently if you are in a relationship. So what is this all about? This started in terms of my coaching work, and I've been working a lot with people about trying to find the right work for them. Because I get a lot of people who are coming to me who are pretty satisfied, but something is not quite right. There's something that is off. And I've tried to think, well, what is this? And so I've been very influenced by the book Good to Great, which I worked with Bob Chapman at United Bank. We read that book, and all of you, Pam and Amy, have read it. And they have this idea of how do you find a sweet spot for a company? And they have 3 circles. Well, I expanded it to 4 circles. So this is quite derivative, but I've changed the questions because they're talking about it from a corporate place. And here are the 4 things that I think are important. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about this, talk about the model, and then you're going to actually work on it at your tables. And my associates in the groups are going to help facilitate the conversation because they've been through this and help you answer the questions. I don't expect that you're going to come out of here with a finished plan. If anything, it's a good first draft. The key to a good book is a shitty first draft, right? A lot of people don't realize that, but great things you see have been edited many, many times. And that's writing is rewriting. Writing is rewriting. Yeah. And I like these great lines. Writing is rewriting. Somebody was trying to sell a company yesterday. They talked to me about it. I have an advisory group that's meeting with this company, and they said if you have one prospect to buy your company, you have no prospect. What does that mean? You got to have 2 to make anything happen, right? They're going to take advantage of it. So anyway, the idea here is go through this, make a lousy first draft, and then work on it, and rework on it, and rework on it with people that you know, because I'm asking you to, except if you're here for a couple, great, but if you're here by yourself, often you don't have a good self-perception. We often think, well, we know ourselves best, but when we go check out what other people that have known us for a long time, family, friends, they know us better, especially the rough edges. They're well aware of those, right? Those of you, anybody in the room have rough edges? One person only. Thank you for being honest. Does Randy remind you of those efforts? So that is actually a great function of being in a relationship or having friends and family that can be honest and give you feedback. Sometimes it's painful, but it's better than imagining that you're going along in a self-delusionary manner, which often we do. So what are the 4 circles? We're going to get you working on this. First is the idea of what are you passionate about? And you've all heard about the book, Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. Well, I think that's somewhat true, but not completely true. Especially if you go to Las Vegas, the money will follow you. You'll leave the money there. But I don't think it's completely true. And there's a lot of people that have great passions, and it's very hard to figure out how to make money at that. But I think if you combine it with these other 3 pieces. So first of all, that's the first step, knowing what you really love to do. And we'll go through some questions about how do you determine that, although that may be the easiest one to figure out. The second one is, what are your combination of unique talents? And by that I mean everything from what you were doing when you were 7 years old, 17 years old, 27, on up, that you have done and learned. So some of the things you were kind of born with, and we don't know how those things happen. Somebody asked me yesterday, this is an individual who has been very disappointed in his career because he's never been appointed to be a leader. And he said to me after 3 or 4 frustrations, why am I not a leader? And I said, well, every leader I know has been a leader way before their work role started. I said, so were you a leader as a kid? He said, no, I was on the team, but I was basically the follower. I was the designated hitter. I was, the kid on the block who people called over to do poker. I wasn't the one organizing the poker. Have we ever been elected to a school government thing? No, never. So the idea is you can't really become a leader, I believe, unless you have had that kind of genetic or early experience of becoming that leader. Personally, when I look back at my career, people say, well, this friend said, how you become a leader, Rob, how'd you do that? I thought, well, at 7 I was organizing the kids on the street to play, whether it was baseball or hockey or football in the street. At 15 I was on a student council, probably 13. I won the JFK award in my high school for leadership. So it's not anything that I was doing it before I even knew there was a concept of learning to be a leader. It was just a natural thing. Where did it come from? I have no idea. My parents were both kind of shy people that felt like they were not leaders. They were frustrated about that. So where did that wiring come from? I have no idea, but something got triggered, and it's been a natural thing for me to do. It's not always been a good thing because I've led people in the wrong direction. And I said this to my brother, and well, I shouldn't say who this was, but my brother-in-law. But I said this to him. Like good leader, just because you're a leader doesn't mean you're good. And I said Adolf Hitler is one of the most famous leaders of all time. He led his people off the cliff and led the world off the cliff. And we see very many powerful leaders even today. We see it's not even a story anymore when a leader self-destructs because it just happens so often. So just being a leader is no great shakes. It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you necessarily any more successful. It just happens to be that's how you're wired. So that unique talent level is important. Are you a leader? And then there's also the things, not just you were born with, but what you've learned. You guys have learned crafts. Scott is an expert professor at the University of Michigan Business School, and he has learned to teach, and he's adapted new technologies. He's teaching one of the first online classes. So this is his area of expertise, the act of teaching, the act of research, writing up the research, but he's an innovator, and that's the part that's probably wired, and he's probably been an innovator. I asked his wife, but she probably said, yeah, he's been an innovator. The good and the bad of that. Like the old is never quite good enough for innovators, which is, again, it's not a good or a bad, because you could drive people crazy being an innovator. Your life can be chaotic. It's kind of like, some of the great innovators are people that drive other people crazy because they're always inventing new things, doing new things. There's never any way to do it. You have other people that their skill is to be highly organized, very do things regularly, routinely. If I'm going to hire a lawyer, I probably want somebody more in that camp than I want an innovator. Let me try out this new approach to defending you. I've never tried it before. I read about it, and man, it's going to work. I said, Toby, let's talk here. Have you read your books about what's worked before? Maybe we should try that. So again, if you're a real innovator and a lawyer, maybe you should use your law degree for a startup or something else, but not necessarily practice law. Bill Herman's an interesting guy because he's a CPA and an innovator. So he's very organized, but he's also, I guess, recreated Plant Moran. I mean, how many years were you managing partner of Plant Moran?
About 10.
10 years, but in that 10 years, Plant Moran was not the same company that when it went in because he brought a lot of innovation. But it was a CPA firm that had been a history of innovation. The person before him had changed it all around. So it's not your standard, let's do things the same way. When I go to Bill to get my taxes done, I'd rather not hear about an innovation that the IRS is not aware of. It's like, I don't want to be your scapegoat. Not your scapegoat, but your guinea pig thing. One of those animals. I'd rather be a scapegoat or a guinea pig. And then the other piece is, are you working in the value area? And this is a big bubble, okay, because values have to do with, first of all, there's the obvious one. Are you working in something you believe in? If you move from American Tobacco Company approached you and said, Adobe's a great company, but, well, we have a great opportunity to double your salary, and all you need to do is help our segments of cigarettes, and particularly, we'd like you to target the 16-year-olds. Don't tell anybody. Well, you might have a little bit of trouble with that, even though the bubble of finances are great. maybe you have a beautiful office, and maybe you have to travel over the world first class. So there's that value. There's also the value of ethics. You might be in a place that is, if you look at their chart of what our core values are, they're great. But if you dig in, you realize nobody's practicing these core values, or especially maybe the people at the top are not practicing them, or there's people at the bottom who are not practicing them, and they don't get called out because they have broken the core values. So there's that level of what I call the ethical level. There's also the political level. You may be in a place that has great values, they hold people to ethics, but there's some political shenanigans going on that, somebody's getting favorite treatment because they're somebody's relative, or they're having a relationship with somebody that's not been talked about, or, politically they're pro this or pro that, and you're not. So there's all those office politics, which I spend a lot of time with my coaching clients because they're subtle. They're not easy to read. They have a lot to do with personality. And when you're in a position, when you're going into a company, you're trying to decide whether to take a job, it's very hard to figure out, well, is this the right job? Is this the right company? You can read about it. You can say what's being said. Particularly like small companies, you can't even read about that. And so you try to ask people, what's it like to work here? And then often we don't want to hear it anyway, because we love the job. Yeah, so you say you left, and 12 people have left in the last year, but I'm going to be different in this company. I think I get it. I'm going to take this job. So there's that kind of value. Then there's the value of work-life balance. Does this job support your well-being? And by well-being is to support your health. I mean, I'm working with some companies now where every time somebody's successful, they get rewarded by getting another job in addition to the job that they had. You know that right? So your VP of segment A, you've done such a good job with segment A, you're now VP of segment B. And you know what? We love you, and we're not going to give you any other resources. Your money's going to come later, because we got your back. Can't pay any more now. But you're already working 60 hours at segment A, so how do you do segment B? And this happens all the time at the higher ranks and the lower ranks of the organization. You get promoted and you get something added on. And this is, we're trying to operate our economy today on a scaled down version of number of people, and I don't think it's working very well. I mean, one of the ways we could probably solve the unemployment issue is actually have everybody work maximum of 50 hours. And so there's a lot of people that are working. Well, how many of you are working more than 50 hours a week? How many more than 60? So I won't even go up beyond that. I probably have to give you oxygen if you know. But it's not a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. I don't care how much you love it, how much you're passionate about it. You have to work that many hours consistently, year after year. We can all do it for a burst. It's like Ken Dalford, who was here last month, talked about this book. You guys are part of this group in Florida that talks about you can work in bursts, and like an athlete can run a sprint, but you can't run that sprint for the whole marathon. And after the marathon or the sprint, you need to take a rest. And that's how our bodies work. It's extreme work and extreme rest. It's like a dog, right? The dog can run around and chase the frisbee for an hour, and then what does the dog do? Collapses for 8, right? Pants there. We don't get much panting time. We just keep going. And so I think that's part of the value. I don't know why I just came up. Write that down. Capture my good lines here. So that's another bubble, is the values. There's a lot in that. And then the fourth one is one we most often think about is finance. And that is, I don't think just about how much you make. It's like a total package of money, benefits, so on and so forth. But it drives a lot of people as the primary thing, especially the younger people. And I work with MBA students, I work with education students. A lot of times people choose their major based on where the money is going to be. I was talking to Jan, and enrollments are way down in education. And part of that is the bright kids see, well, there's not money there. And there's also, it's kind of a messed up area because of the unions and, the union fights with the cities and everything else that's going on. So where do people go? Well, they go for the business school. And, that's where the money's going to be. Now, how many people apply for undergrad program for students?
4 times as many as are there.
Okay. How many MBAs? Probably even bigger.
Yeah, I think they're about 5.
Okay. So you see in those programs, they're very selective because people think, well, the money's in business. They love business? No. Law is another one. A lot of my young friends have gone into law because it seemed like a secure, well-paid profession. Did they love the law? Is that what they wanted to do? No, not necessarily, but it seemed like a logical step. And then there's other people that have thought about that and backed off because they love what to do. I think Sam's an example of that. Thought about law school and then said, I want to do some other things. And now people get out and it looked like it was going to be a very lucrative profession, but it's hard to keep a job, it's hard to find a job. So you can't really predict ahead, and if you go just for the money, the other thing that people do is they get the jobs, they go to MBA, and they go to Wall Street, and they're earning $150,000, $200,000 in the first few years. Man, this is great. Well, they never have any life. They don't have a relationship, and they're locked into a lifestyle that's a $200,000 lifestyle. Where are they going to go? They say, I want to go start an art association or work for RE at Ann Arbor Art Association. They can't afford to do that because they've been locked into the saddle. So those are the 4 circles. And Bill and I and Bob, a number of people have been talking about this. And one way to think about it, Bill, maybe you could talk about it, it's almost like the idea of a bubble, or a balloon. Do you have an extra mic?
I think they can hear me.
Yeah, well, he needs to hear you on the...
I'll turn this way.
All right.
I think if you look at the 4 circles that Rob's got on the page, what you might envision is that they're pulsing. And at different points in your life, the individual circle will have more significance. So think about being 25. The financial one is probably a big one because you're getting started, a lot of investments. As you get older and you've had some accomplishments, that may shrink, but the values may grow. And I think as you look at this sweet spot at the center, it's going to be the combination of where you are at a point in time, as well as what are the most important items to you at that particular point in time.
So if I've got the group, Bill and Bob are in one group, Katrina, Amy, Derek, a few other people are in another group, you might, well, let's guess which one is the older group and the younger. You don't have to. But you guys are, in this group, Bob and Bill, a couple other people are moving toward that role time when they love to do work, but they can't necessarily continue at the jobs there. They got to get out of the way for the younger people. And also maybe want to slow down a little bit. But maybe that money circle, if you're lucky, is good enough, you can plan well enough that you're not driven by the money at this point. So something else may emerge. And on the other hand, if you're Derek's age and you got a new baby, right, Derek, and a teenage child, you've got to think about that money when it can't be just Derek doing what he loves because he's got responsibilities to support young kids. And so I think that that idea of the vacillating size is important. Another one that somebody came up with was the idea of like a mixing board at a concert. Turn up the bass a little bit at one point, turn up the treble. We need to be loud on the song because we want to hear the words, but we need to tone down the guitar. Or we need to tone it all up if you go to a rock concert and it's all blasted. But the idea is that these are not variable, they're not even. And at any point in your life, they're going to change. And this is not going to be the same sweet spot for you now as it is in the future. Things change. You might be at a corporation, and I was talking to Don about this, that the values when you're a startup and you're really trying to make a hit on it, it's a very exciting workplace. It may be stressful. Then it gets bought, and the buyer doesn't do what you think you're going to do with it. So then your passion for that business is not going to same. Maybe your salary is the same, maybe your talents are the same, but the passion. So this is why things change, and a lot of times they're not in our control. So let's start with the, everybody's going to help her at the table, so can you guys distribute yourself? How many do we have? Yeah, we have enough. Maybe you guys can help. You guys been through this a little bit, maybe facilitated people need help. Anybody else been through this? Derek?
Anyone who needs a pen, I have a couple extras.
So let's do the So let's do the circles. So here's what I'd like you to do. Short on handouts. How many handouts are we doing?
Yes,
Stephanie, maybe they can make some more copies. Or else you can just draw it.
yeah, as long as you guys have at least one at your table that you guys can reference, if you want to write on a blank paper, you want to write on that, then I can email it out later to everyone, so everyone has that.
How many are we short? All right, so what I'd like you to do is work at your tables on these questions. And if you have questions, ask the facilitator or ask me. The questions are kind of written on here. It's one of the four circles. And the idea is identify questions about passion, identify the unique talents and values, and then financial. Talk about it, and then see if you can figure out. I think the question is what you're doing now, how close is that to the sweet spot? Are you 80% there with what you're doing? I don't think anybody's ever 100% there. Are you 40%? Is there something that you're moving toward that you really prefer to do? And so let's look at these and just go from here.
The easiest to answer. Some are easy and some are hard.
Let's take 20 minutes to just do this the first time, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
I'm doing great.
Kind of the same thing. Actually, working with a producer in Hollywood, we're putting together a mobile interactive team. So I've raised money for companies. I'm kind of looking, I'd like to license it out to different, it doesn't necessarily have to be the networks because it's a very niche market. From cooking to fashion, even extreme sports. It's very much into what they're calling social TV.
I'm going to get some B-roll stuff here. So just go ahead and keep
okay.
talking. But you talk right into it.
Anyway, so it's, I think it goes along with like, things, like I'm talking to a lot of Europe right now, and she's really passionate about horses. And she works it seems like, as maybe my observation, but passion and unique talent seems to be the same. Obviously, it intersects there. Actually,
Not necessarily you may be passionate about something that doesn't necessarily involve your job. You may be very passionate about dogs. You really love dogs.
an example of your friend that educated about horses, but that's not what she does.
Yeah. So maybe you can know that in some other way. So maybe if you're passionate about horses, you volunteer your time as a horse breeder and you go and you help her or, so you may feel that you need some more help. The other people are passionate, they're passionate about horses, but they don't want to be a shop leader. That's how they do it. So then they say, so you might fulfill some of those circles, not necessarily with your occupation.
Are there any burning questions to ask me and I can answer?
That diamond spot, that's called the sweet spot, hopefully you're in that spot by having a balance. And then maybe, like I said, it might come from community. You might have a balance of skill, family life, and then the occupation that you're currently doing. And with that, you are in a sweet spot because you're covering all all the circles by all of the work that you do.
Okay. So are you in your sweet spot?
Stephanie.
That works for Rob. Okay. I know that's not for yours.
Be careful what you say, right?
The thing's right here on me, right? Not necessarily, but how he talks about the pulsing circles and some things are larger and some smaller. I was an accountant. I always say I'm an accountant. Everyone thinks it's funny, but I had a degree. I had a degree in business school in accounting. I worked in a career, fast track career in accounting, and I was the global director of auditing for a large IT company. And then I had my second child, and I stepped back and said, wait a minute, I kind of missed my first childhood because I was working 6 hours a week and traveling all over the world. I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I opted for that now. I just said I got one of the companies.
Software.
Right.
I figure unless I'm interviewing
There you go. So yeah, my
started kind of redoing
originally it was
all of these players. And like you're going to be
2009, kind of a mentor at the company. So I was
It's interesting that you can tell by all accounts a very successful job going on. People can think highly of you, well paid, well compensated in many ways, and have prestige that goes with that. And yet when you sit down and look at this, you can oddly, and very almost in stark reality, honestly answer the question, you realize that I am in the wrong neighborhood, not just the wrong room of the house, but the wrong neighborhood. This doesn't even qualify me. And that's what I'd say. I actually answered the question. And it first thing you you guys want to just talk about passionate about to kind of give advice trying to find that. I mean, that sweet spot. I don't know that
but sort of outside of that, assuming the financial they're not all that solid, so they might one might financial side might have watched this
back of the sheet.
But if you're paying for your kids' activities outside, oh, I think something
What's scary?
or something like my son, like how I not as much.
A lot of times it has very different. Like one of the things that we're doing as part of TV, the very basic. I always look at Are we talking about a community like Arbor, or
So this could be activity, it doesn't have to be
I think that's to identify yourself as being part of that occupational. It's whatever it is and all of it is very personal. So it's whatever you define as what passion is, the talent. So it has a lot to do about your own goals, your family goals, and your partner's goals, things like
Sometimes I wonder if we're not just like a real need, It's funny, for a while in South Rico, I remember sort of walking around.
A couple questions I want to just clarify, if I can have your attention for a minute. People have asked about the passion question. I think the key here is, I think it's important to think about continuity. So what's been a theme of what you're passionate about? Has it been music? Has it been social change? Think not only about today, think about pre-college days. And what did you get involved in? What did you spend your money on? Another way to think, when you get a Sunday New York Times or a Wall Street Journal, what page do you go to first? You read Arts and Leisure, you read the book section, where do you flip to in the magazine? What channels do you watch most on TV? And that'll tell you kind of what your passions are. It's not necessarily a professional type.
Yeah, actually, this is good traction. I'm focusing on this one. This was actually the quickest one. This one I spent a lot of time
This one is hard to figure out. And again, do you think about what have you been into?
Yes, yeah, sure.
What kinds of
Thinking about, I read, think about what interests me, what really for me, the activity is basically create economic
baseball, I don't want to get
Look at both of these passion and talent. Natural crossover between the two of them. And as I was athletics and coaching, is passion. Beyond that, I think I don't know if I haven't worked deep enough to know what my other passions are, what my other unique talents are. Maybe that's too broad, athletics and coaching. But I think that's where maybe I'm in my sweet spot, but I need to convince myself. You know what I mean?
And maybe instead of using the words like athletics, what is it about athletics that you really like? I mean,
Right.
is it that you like to pound, or do you like to do it yourself, or do you like to see the look on a kid's face?
That's it. It's the interaction between and providing leadership to a program that will provide success, life success, lifelong success for young kids. Growing up, I wanted to be a teacher on a high school football team. I got derailed and got the job in Michigan. So my passion is to help other kids at that level fulfill their goals through athletics. That's my passion. And I don't know if I have a unique talent, but I want to have a unique talent.
So, maybe that is it.
Yeah.
And see, we always kind of put umbrellas and things like we use words like, for me, fashion. What is it about that? Well, my sister, she is a tailor. She's a tailor to all the stars. And I asked her that question. She's not, none of the, she's on like relationship classes on speed dial. I said, well, what is it that you like to do? She said, I love ripping apart clothes and getting the construction fabric. And as a little kid, 6 months old, 18 years younger than I, whatever. I remember picking pieces of stitches on the carpet, color picking. So, it's like my part as far as fashion is concerned, I like to design it, but I have no desire to construct it and sew it, get a stitch. I always my partners have been over to me down there and ask her had no advice or whatever I did. Why did not ask her what's happening? But it's especially in the department financial hung up on the dollar amount without thinking about what is that dollar amount enabling us to save for college. I didn't have a college enrollment, so thinking about instead of just that dollar by itself, and is there a different relationship that you would
girlfriend. They get to put on TV the 911 call of the mother. Do I want to hear this? Is that $3 So you live it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Talking about succession, the other thing that you got is unexpected events. I always thought my partner was going to take a business over because I sort of created this thing and I wanted to continue, indefinitely. And I thought she was going to, she and I have worked together for 30 years. And now she's and she's younger, like 10 years younger. And I thought she was going to do it, and now it's a little bit like, there's a hole. And like, how do you fill the hole? Or do you just say, no, like that's it. So, it's those events, the black swans, okay, that can sweep in and kill it. Oh, good.
Look like words of wisdom over here.
Oh my goodness, right here. Oh, talk to this man.
Now you have to hold it close before so it'll work.
But no, we're talking about how these circles change with age. And we're sort of in a more senior set here, with the exception of this guy, perhaps. That it's just a different thing. The light can grow change. changes in into the mix.
It's kind of interesting. When you look at succession, the size of the organization, the number of people that are available. A lot of it is you can have multiple operators. Smaller, it's kind of like you've got unidentified persons. You got all the eggs in one basket, which is probably what we're saying about it. Identifying what you need and that inevitability that called the black swan. How do you get that? How do you have to go outside the organization.
And the other thing is, Jerry, when you have to go outside, probably identify somebody that's come in that may be very good in the view of culture might be 180 degrees of what the current culture is than what it is.
Roger, is which way is it?
Toward the mic?
Yeah, right.
Okay, I think it should be working. So let's just think about, let's just shout out some stuff. What are some of the people's passions that you wrote out? Any that I walked around is interesting.
I have the mic.
Yeah, okay, so Stephanie's going to share this. We're trying to get all the comments on mic, so don't shout out before she's in front of you. But one of the things I found interesting is how many similarities there were on some passions. So, for example, tell me your name again, I'm sorry. Elaine talked about world politics, world economics, was that? Yeah. And then I heard the same comment from Ben right behind you. Then we have, so your name is Gorta is going back to Algeria in a few weeks to start a business. So there's a lot of connections in the room. So let's hear some of the ones that came out around passion. Just if you can, how about if you say them and I'll repeat them so we don't have to run around the mic. What other ones we heard about passion?
Delight others.
Pardon?
I like to delight others.
Delight others, okay. Your passion is delighting others, all right.
Incidentally, she also just wrote World Affairs and what she's not good at.
It's all light bulb go off and then you okay.
Not good at, well, you know, it's not a bad joke. It's under the unique talents. I forgot to say this. You should write what you're not good at. You know, like Rob Pasick should never work for Plant Moran as an accountant. That's why you didn't hire me, right? What others? How about you? What you have this table?
Helping others.
Helping others. How many had helping others as a... Raise your hands. That's a lot of these. I'm seeing probably a third of the people helping others. Okay. What else did you have? Jan, what did you have?
Me?
Yeah.
I have, I'm passionate about my family and about creating and making something specific.
Creating something specific in family.
Yeah.
You created a family, so that's good. And actually, that is an act of creation we don't think about. But, you know, it is. B?
Problem solving.
Problem solving. Okay, is that something you've been doing?
Yes.
For your whole life? Were you the go-to guy in the neighborhood? Somebody had a problem, you could go talk to police? How about under Marissa?
I was just going to say, helping people work more efficiently. I've always been one for process and office supplies and folders that are labeled with pretty thin, you know.
Did you get that under?
You should come and help us.
Well, Marissa, this is Marissa Smith who came in late, and she has a company that basically does that with websites and using the social media. And your first software product was right in that. What was it? What was your first software?
Well, it's to help people take a process that took them about 600 hours to do something manually, and it took it down to 90 seconds automatically.
90 seconds?
Yeah.
Wow.
What's the name of your company?
I couldn't make enough money on that, so you had to go do something else? All right. What about unique talents? What are some of the unique talents that came out? Anybody want to... Does anybody have an aha moment about this? Like, what are their combinations of unique talents? It's a hard one because it's bringing together different things. Yes?
Don pointed it out.
Why don't you, let's get this on the mic.
Don pointed out, because I'm having a hard time coming up with the words, but optimism. always being optimistic, no matter what the situation is. So,
Donna she has a unique talent that I can see when I work with her in health media, is that she's the uplifter, the person in the office that people go to share their ideas, they share their down moments, and she's always got something positive to say. So, we teach positivity. Donna can teach it because she's got it naturally. And that's an example, I think, of a unique talent. You were probably, I assume you've been that way your whole life.
I have, but
I dated in high school.
I didn't have the word until just now. So.
So that's good. That's a really good insight. Anybody else have an example of that? Yes. Over here. Derek? Let's get Mike on Derek.
We have a unique talent question, right?
Yeah.
For the unique talent that I have a gift to lead and a gift to interpret and understand divine scripture. And I feel like having that ability and having a desire to seek truth and wisdom gives me the ability to help others, which is one of the things that I'm passionate about. Help others succeed, help encourage others, as she was referring to optimism and being positive. From my understanding, from the learning that I've had, it gives me the ability to be more effective and to apply it every day for myself and for others.
For those of you that have come into Zingerman's and work with Derek, he's been waiting on tables as a greeting. You can again pick that up. He's in a role where he's kind of like a Zingerman's ambassador. I think there's a number of people that they're hired at Zingerman's because they're really good at that. But Derek also has, I think, something that a number of other people in the room have, and that is you've had the talent to bring yourself up from not ideal circumstances that you were born into. And there's a lot of self-made people in the room. You folks are from Trinidad, right? And you came from humble origins in Trinidad, and now are professors with PhDs at universities throughout the Eastern Michigan University. And there's other people in the room I know from talking to you that have brought yourself up, not from necessarily the most advanced socioeconomic privileged situation to make something really good. And Derek was born in Detroit, right, Derek?
I was in Belleville.
Okay. So gone through, to go through tough times and then rise above it, that's a unique talent, and it's a survivor. And again, I think about some of these things. Risk-taking is one of those unique talents. I don't know how many people put risk-taking down as a unique talent. Because that's one of them. And you again, look back on your careers, your life. I was telling my wife the other day that when I was 18, I grew up in Ferndale, Michigan, and I went to my freshman year at Wayne State, and I got on a bus first summer after college, and I went all by myself to work in New York. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no money. I maybe had $50 in my pocket, if that. And but it was just I like to take a risk. I did that, and that's kind of been who I am. Where did that come from? I have no idea. My parents thought I was absolutely crazy for doing that because they never would have done that. But they were proud of me too for having taken that risk. So that think about where you've come from and where you are. That's another part of your unique talent. Your theater, we used to talk about it as like your core, your thread, spine, I think. What is your spine?
See, that what Derek said, though, he led with the...
Me, I'll get my mic up.
There you go, Doc.
What Derek said, I think we were talking about intuition here, and I think, the truth is always true, and so when you go back and look at the spiritual foundations that we all draw upon, and I don't care what religion it is, it could be Islam, it could be Judeo-Christian, it could be Buddhism, but in those truths, there's things that will unlock particularly your intuition or the still small voice in you that says, go here, not there. And you can't really, so being able to key into that, that's a gift. And stick with that.
I was thinking about your upbringing, Scott. You told me you were raised on Indian reservations, is that correct? Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very unique environment to come from that, but not as a Native American, right?
No, well, I am 1/4.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I speak of Ojibwe.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people. How many other people? No. Okay. So, I mean, and you know, it's interesting on the other end of the cycle. I wanted to tell you guys that a member of our group and a wonderful member of our community is going through some very serious health problems. It's Carl Port. And Carl was the owner of Shaman Drum Books, and was very supportive to me. He was the first person that let me do a book signing. We needed a lot of book signings for first-time authors in the community. And he's struggling with a rare type of thyroid cancer. But I've been reading his posts, which are on Facebook, and what you said, the core of who Carl is enabling him to get through. He's quoting poetry. He's got a bunch of friends who he's helped who are helping him. So even in tough times, I mean, those core roots of your unique, who you are, your spine, can get you through this. So let's all pray or hope for Carl's recovery, and if you know him, I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. All right, well, how about the values? This one is a big bucket, and I'd rather just hearing this. What are some of the struggles that you guys had trying to figure this out? What are maybe some of the ahas you had on the value side? It's a tough one to share.
I will.
Pam, thank you.
All right.
So where's the mic over?
Well, it's running around the room.
Hold it close.
All right. My core.
A little louder.
My values would be faith-based, and I use that both in my activities in church and the boards I serve on, like Catholic Social Services, the shelter, Gift of Life. These are all things where I have an ability to give back my time and treasures.
So I know Pam well, and Pam works her values at work because she's a business lender and a leader at the bank. And I think part of your success is people know you are a trustworthy person, you care about them, you back companies that have good missions, and you know, you build a relationship around that. So that's an example, I think, how you leverage your values to also be successful in a job. I'm going to move through this quickly, but let the financial piece, anybody have anything to share around that? I mean, that's one that's very personal. It's something that, you know, of all the things people talk about, people are most reluctant to talk about money and finances. Huh?
It's not important what the number actually is. The part I want to share is I undertook this question in advance of today, and what struck me was that you start out thinking about, well, relative to my salary today, but it doesn't take you long to start thinking about it, well, in terms of true financial need. What I was struck by was how relatively small that number is in honest assessment compared to what you actually make. And so what that creates is a huge gap, and it drives optimism. You realize I don't have to make $1 million, not that I make $1 million, I don't have to take home $1 million, I don't even have to replace the take-home pay I have today, whether that's $30,000 or $100,000. What you have to replace is the bare essentials to sustain you.
Yeah.
And when you put it in that context, you don't need as much money as you think. That was the conclusion I came to.
Well, I think that goes along with the idea that all the research on happiness basically reinforces that concept that if people are making enough to take care of the basic needs, I'm talking real basic, I'm not talking about, going on huge vacation, that they're no less happy than people who are making, so there's kind of a very sharp increase from not having enough to being happy where you have enough, then it really flattens out over time, and the more you make does not correlate at all with how happy you are. So the people who are going right out of school, like business school people, and are jumping right into $200,000, maybe doing themselves a disservice because they can't go back. It's hard to say, well, really what I wanted to do was be in the Peace Corps, but I've got to pay my mortgage on this house in Connecticut, so it's a different thing. And there's people in the room that I know have moved from that higher echelon, a lot of income, back to a reasonable, again, meeting basic needs, and are much happier. Yes. Marissa?
I was just going to say, I read an article recently about a family that was struggling with this and saying, we need to, we got to pay for childcare and our 2 car payments and, the babysitter and all this stuff. And it turned out that when they really sat down and looked at it, they were basically working to pay for childcare, which they needed because one of them was working.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a break-even type of scenario. And when the parents realized that, one of them quit and they got rid of one of their cars and they downsized their house, and suddenly they didn't need all of the things that they thought they needed, and that income became, so the kind of craziness that their lifestyle had become was kind of their own fault. And one of them actually didn't like their job, and so it made sense to just change it completely. But you get kind of trapped in this, this is just the way things are, and it has to be this way, and you can't step away from it sometimes and see that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you, that's a great story. Scott's got one over here.
Yeah, we're sort of at the other end of this spectrum. We have 2 kids who are going to be in private college starting next year. So that's, 80 plus 100 something per year for the next 3 or 4 years. Then of course there's grad school, etc. So we're moving out of our house into going to be living in an apartment. We're getting rid of a couple cars, but I'm also looking to hopefully increase my salary by 50% over the next couple of years, doing some consulting, whatever, while evaluating what things are really important, but still, it's all really important to me and my kids. I'm a professor, so education seems to be sort of important to me, and I hopefully pass that on to my kids, but I have to enable it so that we're not all 4 of us in the poorhouse in 10 years from now.
So I want to, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I'm a family of, there's 7 kids in our family. My father was a professor, head of the oceanography, ocean engineering at Florida Institute of Technology. And the way that we got through college was that if we wanted to go to the private school that he taught, was head of the department, that's where we went. And I got my degree in aviation, which was a Bachelor of Science degree, and I really wanted to go get an arts degree. So I guess the point is that in the situation with your children, just the way we were raised with education being so important, it was like, I'm not going to pay for it, but because this is my profession, this is my gift, and you either take advantage of it or, not.
I think that's a really good story. And your name?
Kate O'Hara.
Kate.
Big Irish.
Yeah. I thought you were Jewish with 7 kids. But the point, I think sometimes is that we could give money, but we also give our time. And I know there's a number of people like me, some other people like Amy, where people are giving their time to causes that they really care about. And that can be equally valuable. And I think about my parents. We didn't have much money in my family, but what I got was discipline, and good discipline. So my dad, who didn't finish college, my mother, who didn't finish high school, said after dinner I was going to be in my room, and there was going to be nothing in there but a desk and some paper and homework. That started like in 5th grade. And I hated that because everybody's out doing things and hanging out at the drugstore, smoking their cigarettes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm in my room doing my homework. But it paid off because I was able to get good grades, able to get a scholarship, went to Michigan, paid $300 a year tuition. And that was a lot of money at that time. And they were able to help me in the ways they could. Not necessarily help them with the money, but help them with other things. So I think we have to think about that bubble, maybe not just financial, maybe it should be giving. What do we need, giving and getting. So let me just go through this next part, this kind of next steps. And once you have your sweet spot, and I'm sure all of you have to do a lot of work to get to that, I think the idea is it's important to create a vision of what this looks like. So, let's say, Brad, you've got what you're doing you like, But let's say you have a vision, you know, your sweet spot maybe is a little bit different, or it's something in your organization you want to aspire to. Create that vision of what that would look like. David Sarnes was in New York with his wife. I don't know when they went through an exercise like this, but when they had children, they went through a vision, and they decided the vision was to be back in Ann Arbor, working as part of the family business, raising kids with grandma and grandpa. So that's what I mean by a vision. You know, almost a vision is something I think it's simple to think about. Close your eyes. What can you see in the future for yourself? You see a new wing on your house? Do you see yourself living in a new country? Do you see yourself having your own business? Do you see yourself at the head of a corporation? I close my eyes and I see center field at Comerica, but you know, it may not happen. I don't know. What do you think? No. Brutal honesty is also very. Not the grass. But then Rafe was talking about goals, and I am a strong believer in goal setting. When I was in New York City teaching in Harlem in the 60s, after my $300 a year education, I got a $6,000 a year teaching job in New York City schools. And I worked with a man who was a house painter from Cleveland. And the guy had a vision about coming to New York to be an actor. And he was a goal setter. He read every positive self-help book that you could find, which were not too many in Cleveland at the time, but Psycho-Cybernetics was the first one that he introduced us to. Remember that one? It's a very good book. Still a good book. And he taught me about goal setting, and the idea was to goal set, have a vision of what you want, write the date down that you're setting the goal, write down what the goal is in very behavioral terms so you can see it. Write down the date by which you're going to achieve it. Write down why it's important. Write down how you're going to get there. And in the most rudimentary way. It doesn't have to be a detailed project plan, but I'm going to get there by going back to school, or I'm going to get there by getting a job in this place, or I'm going to get there by talking to Scott Draper about whatever. And then, you know, that's the process. And it's in my book, Balanced Leadership, in more detail. So if any of you are interested in learning more about this, I'm happy to talk to you. And also, I have my books for sale after the meeting today, if some of you are interested in purchasing one of these books. So then when you have your goals, you have to have a plan. And you know, we all often talk about a plan for our business, but we fail to make a plan for our lives. So the plan is, how do I get from A to B? What is my roadmap? What are the key markers? Just like you learn in business. And then the key is, what are your actions? And I'm always thinking, what's your next action? Not what's your big action, but let's say you write down a vision of, say Pat and I write down a vision, we want to find work collaboratively in Africa. And we want to get paid for it, and I want to use my leadership skills, and Pat wants to use her social entrepreneurship skills. We set a goal to go to Africa. We make a plan. What's the next step? I email my friend Businji Johnson, who's the Supreme Court Justice in Rwanda, and say, Businji, here's what I'm interested in doing. Do you have any ideas of how maybe we can work together, which we did years ago? Pat will get on the phone and say to her book agent, how's that book coming? Have you guys submitted it yet? Because I really want to get that book about Africa published. So it's what's the next steps, not the big action. So Amy was saying right here, she and I are talking about, we both have a little ADD, and it's really important, I think, to write down your key actions every day. Whether you have ADD or you're OCD or whatever the hell you are. The difference between ADD and OCD is you write down different goals every day. OCD, you write the same goal. And then, so that next action, and always writing, what's the most important action I can take today to move me on my goal? Not the big goal, but just what's the most important action that I can take today. doing this presentation, for me, it's a big step. It's an action thing. But it wasn't just that I said, well, I'm going to do this presentation. I met for months with the small groups, with the emerging leaders group, with the old timers group, whatever, and we did lessons on this. And then I wrote about it. I put it on Dr. Rob's 100 tips. And then I do the workshop. What's my next step? I'm not sure, but I already have plans to send this to Colleen New Haven in New York. We're going to talk about writing about it, an article. I'm also going to send it to my book agent and think about, is there a book in this possibility? So there's always the next step. No matter where you are, up, down, all around, what's the next thing you can do? Somebody's lost a job, what's the next step? Maybe it's just getting unemployment. Maybe it's talking to a friend. Maybe it's going someplace and having a good cry. Probably not going to the bar. That's not usually. And then once you act, there's the monitor and adjusting. And then I go through all of this cycle. It's not in order. I mean, as you go through it, the first time it's probably in order, but then it's back and forth. Opportunities are a big part of that, and that's why I think action is key. Because if you act, the universe will provide. It's one of the spiritual beliefs I really have, is that if you commit to something and you act upon it, things happen. And that's why in this room, I think it's important for people to share what they want. Because if you say it out loud here, you don't know who else may share that same dream or may say, yeah, I know how to get you there. Let's say you want to be on Oprah, that's your goal. Speak it out loud. Somebody says, my son-in-law is a co-producer on Oprah. I could get you to talk to him. Really? No idea. If I hadn't said something about wanting an Oprah, nobody would have known. So anybody, let's just end with that. Does anybody want to throw out something they're looking for, a dream that came out of this, something that occurred to them that they want to share with the group and see if anybody's got any ideas about how to help them? Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a way to get somewhere you want to go, maybe it's help for your child. But are there any people that want to just throw out to the universe of CEO Connect people something they may want to look at? Where's the mic? Got it in the back. Anybody want to share something they're looking for? Something new they want to accomplish or achieve? It's come out of this or they've had before.
I need to raise money
Well, hold
for
on.
the Arts Center. I need to figure out how to raise money for the Arts Center. So I haven't really worked in the nonprofit sector before, and I really do believe in the mission, but I don't know how to go out and raise money from corporations. And I know they all have community outreach programs, so I'm trying to get my words around how to go out and do that for this organization.
And I've talked to Maria about talking to people like Ken Fisher or Mike's last name, Russ Collins, I should say. But there are fundraisers in here that maybe can help Marie with this. Sometimes it's just connecting. Say, hey, why don't you talk to somebody? Scott Draper out there.
Talk to Amy, who works on fundraising for the neutral.
How many people work on fundraising? Okay, so there's 3 right there. Anybody else have something? And do you have something you want to give to? Because aren't we looking for some positions to fill, or is that not public?
Yes, we have a couple positions open on the website as well.
You want to say what those are?
So, first, we do have a business development position that's open that is involved with using communication for memberships. And we also have a registrar position open. So one of the ways that we earn money in this organization is we give art classes. So we need someone to help with the registration and the development of those classes in that curriculum.
So here's somebody, if you know somebody that's got a passion for the arts, and is maybe looking for a job and looking for a change in their current job, throwing things out to the universe is also a good way to do that. Anybody else have something that they're hopeful? Patty?
I'm just looking and kind of toying with the idea. I've probably been doing it for a couple of years now, with transitioning my skills and expertise to doing something more local in Ann Arbor. That's where I live. I currently my business offices in Brighton, but I'm all over the state of Michigan. And just really working with transitions with the elderly, and we all have parents and grandparents possibly and stuff that are transitioning through the healthcare maze as their illnesses happen, and dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, and that's
what I do every day in my job, and I'd like to bring it more where I'm hands-on, directly working with people and helping them through that transition and understanding it. And I'm trying to get a better framework around it, so I've spoken more succinctly about it. So that's kind of...
Patty, one of the things that I think is a good example of how one gets into a transition is Patty's been helping people who are struggling around their aging parents, and she's doing that without any expectation of being paid. And she's been very helpful to my wife and to several other of our friends. And it's a way that if she wants to transition, that she can try it out, learn a lot about it without having to give up what you're doing. And if it turns out it's something you really love, you've already planted a lot of seeds. Randy?
Yeah, and partly because Patty is thinking about making this transition, but also something I've been thinking about for a couple of years myself, which is that after running my own business for 20 years, I've been starting just recently to talk with some of my clients about going in-house and getting a job.
No longer happy being outhouse?
Right, a little bit of a role, so it's something we've been discussing. And so I've already been, and in particular with at the U of M, because I've worked with many U of M clients over the years, so I've already started talking with some of those folks.
The mill groups who I've known for many years actually made a major shift. Was it 20 years ago or so? Yeah, Randy was a lawyer, a pretty big firm in Los Angeles, and his child didn't know who he was. What was the famous line that Sam said to you?
He referred to me, to his mother, as the man who wakes me up at night.
So Randy no longer wanted to be the man who woke Sam up at night. So they made a wholesale change to come back to Michigan where their families were. And Randy had a dream of being a writer, and he's built a successful writing business. He's working on a novel, which has been a dream, and Patty has launched a successful business. So this is an example of why I want couples to be here, because I think putting the ideas together to be very powerful. And a move like that, just one of you said you wanted to do it, it wasn't going to work. Ferris?
I just have a question, Rob. The question is, in transition, I've talked to thousands of people in the past. My impression seems like people get trained. So maybe you can share some of your insights on how to break the frame that you're in, or that people perceive to what you're
break out of your the way people perceive.
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur, I think people are unfortunately afraid to have them boxing into one category.
Well, I think I use the example of Patty. I think it's a good example of start to do the things, take action to do the things that you're interested in doing. But do them without getting paid, because then you're in a new world, you're trying something different. Don's going to be moving into the entrepreneurial world from the corporate world where he's been for a long time. So how do you break that image? You're a corporate guy. So he's got to get out there and actually start doing some of the things that I assume he planted the seeds for a while already.
Don't look at your cell phone at a networking event. Yeah, it's something that started years ago, literally.
Yeah. And, I think the same thing, getting an education, something different, is a good way to do it. Become an expert in something different. Reading a lot, looking on the web. A lot of times we have to push ourselves to do something. I made the whole article I wrote would be interesting for you about my transition. 20 years ago, I was a full-time family therapist and clinician, and now I'm a full-time executive coach and business consultant. The article is all about how I did that. And one of the things that I came up with was I fell flat on my face many times, and so you got to be willing to make a complete ass out of yourself and fail, because you're not an expert in the new thing and you are in the old thing, and it would have been easy for us. It's easy all to stay in your comfort zone. And sometimes you get a rough blow up. You don't choose to leave, but something comes up that forces you out. And you didn't realize that. I thought I was really happy with what I was doing, but I'm so glad to be out of there into this new thing. And I went kicking and screaming into it, but it's great. So I would like to get your feedback, and it would be great to get written comments, how to make this presentation better. If you'd like to be interviewed in more depth, or if you have somebody I should talk to, lack of clarity about some pieces of this, a different way I should do it. Whatever you have, the more constructive feedback, the better. Don't worry about being negative because I can't take it, so don't worry. I'll probably cry, but then I'll read it and find sometimes the critical stuff is the most effective. So I appreciate your time. Roger, when is this going to be available? I know you do a great job of turning around. 3 days? Okay. So we'll, Stephanie and I will post it next week. Or Stephanie will post it.
Yeah, not that one anywhere near
I don't go anywhere near the website nor the money. I've got a check in my backpack. Give it to me, give it to me. No problem, hold on to it. And, but that actually is another way to parlay unique talents, is to get people around you that do something, has a different set of unique strengths than you do. Don't hire your clone. They're not going to help you at all. They're just going to get you more busy. Alex?
I think one thing that just popped into my head, it's kind of a synthesis of all that's been said here, is, and you hit on it, and I came up with this phrase not long ago, thinking about this little grandson of mine that I'm just totally enamored with, is facing down your fears.
Facing your fears.
And I have to just share this little story. So my grandson is now 2.5. When he was 2 and I last saw him, he was afraid of a dog. And a friend said, well, why don't you give this dog a dog biscuit? And this little 2-year-old had the dog biscuit in his hand. His hand, in 2, was shaking like this. But he didn't cry, he didn't scream. He held it and let the dog take the dog biscuit out of his hand. We knew this was the same dog. But I was thinking, at 2 years old, this little one knew to face down his fears. He didn't scream, he didn't cry. His hand shook and he had tended that dog biscuit. And I thought, how strong is that? And we can all as adults say, let's face down our fears.
Face down. I have 2 phrases I love about fear. One is face the fear, feel the fear, and do it anyway. Yep. And the other is what you fear will find you. So you have a choice. You can either face it and do it anyway, or it's going to find you, and whatever you're afraid of is going to catch up with you. So if you're afraid you're going to lose your job, don't wait to get the red pink slip or whatever. Get out, get a new job before it falls, or do what you need to do to improve your job. You will see it get out if you get to that point. But I think that's very valuable about the fear. Our emotions do drive it. I just did a videotape yesterday on emotional intelligence for the UM Alumni Association, which will be out soon. But that's one of the key pieces about being aware of your feelings and facing the brutal facts. I'm joking with Pasick, but I mean, it is good to get blunt feedback. I'm not going to play center field for Tiger. What about the Yankees? All right, Dave?
Another thing I think you can do, which I found to be really effective, is to volunteer for something that's related to the area that you're working in. And I volunteered for Washtenaw Literacy, and I absolutely love it. And I don't know where it's going to take me, but it's sort of, that's one way to broaden and find this sweet spot.
Great idea. So, Stephanie, we're going to leave the money up front there for...
Well, I'm just going to pass it around real quick to make it easier for everybody.
Okay.
That's more money.
It's a tip for me.
This tip for me. All right, so in January we have Jerome Levin, who's going to be talking about managing your reputation. So I think it should fit in very well. Jerome is one of the premier journalists in the Detroit area. He's been bureau chief for Times, for the Wall Street Journal, and he will be presenting on managing your reputation in the digital age. Should be interesting. Bob, thanks for the sponsorship.
This is so funny. Where is it?
Jackson.
Yeah.
So just west of Jackson.
Sorry, because I this was the